Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Motion for Mindfulness podcast, where we file motions in court, but also in live, so we can best serve our clients. I'm your host, Bethany Allen, a member of the 2024-2025 Leadership Academy, and I have two of my Leadership Academy classmates here, Spier and Peissig and Monica Spier. And the Missouri Bar created this podcast as a series as a part to raise awareness for Wellbeing in Law Week, which is May 5th through May 9th. The Wellbeing in Law initiative created this week to show lawyers how to survive and thrive in their careers. In this episode specifically, we will talk about social well-being and how it isn't just about who we know, but about building meaningful relationships, as well as diving into the importance of a strong network and work-life balance. So Monica and Jeremy, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Okay. So law is often seen as a solitary or a high-stress profession. How do you personally build relationships with colleagues and your peers in this profession?
I think building relationships is key, not only just for success within your career, but also just success within your own personal life. I think that having the relationships that I have in the profession has helped me realize that I'm not alone and that I'm not crazy and I'm not the only one feeling the way that I'm feeling. Often if I have a feeling about a situation, I can very much so turn to somebody else in the profession and they're feeling it too. Mm-hmm. That just keeps you from feeling so isolated, which has been vital for me and as a young attorney, but also throughout law school. That's something that has been crucial to me learning, okay, you're not the only one that has felt this way and you can get out of this, and here are other tips that other people have learned to do so.
Yeah. And I just don't think you could really practice law without the support of so many people. I mean, being an attorney in my first 5 years of practice, I mean, it's, having a mentor is so critical. I mean, there's so much of the law that's, practice and norms versus kind of stricture or, and so, I think it is really critical, and building that network and getting that support is something that we all have to find.
And like what you just said, of having a mentor, having somebody that is further along in their profession. I think it's crucial to have somebody that's further along in their profession, somebody who can be alongside of you, and then also maybe somebody who is behind you in their profession, newer in their profession, so you can help mentor them. But having a mentor is something that's key to, I think, success as a younger attorney, and something I think that's looked over nowadays. But being able to sit and talk with somebody about okay, am I overreacting here?
Yeah.
Doesn't counsel overreacting? Right. Or how can you help just be an objective perspective so I can see where things are at?
Right. Yeah, and you talked about that isolation, right? And that's and I go back to the mentorship part, but that isolation aspect can become so real with attorneys, because sometimes when we jump into the profession, we're intimidated by our counterparts, and it's easy to kind of go in the room, go in your office, close your door, kind of work hard. You're trying to meet everybody's expectations. So I had a place where I worked, and they had an open door policy, right? Because sometimes lawyers come in and they close the door, you don't see them the rest of the day.
Right. Yep.
And it's like when you're a newer attorney, sometimes you don't have those mentors fall into your lap, right? So you have to go out and seek those people by going to ask questions or, being intuitive, being curious about things. So I think that that's really important to kind of have that aspect, especially early on where we're trying to figure out, we might not be as client facing, but we still want to internalize the client issues and kind of know, because a lot of times associates might be in the background writing a lot of briefs. They might not necessarily be trying cases right away. And sometimes you are, but that mentorship along the way kind of helps facilitate that growth and that understanding of the profession.
I think one thing just to add is, mentorship, it might come in the form of, at your actual firm. You might start, and it might be the firm's practice to set you up with somebody internally. Yes. I would also say that it's important to find mentorship outside of your firm. Yep. Someone you're not necessarily working with day to day, but somebody who you can sort of bounce things off of outside, who might bring kind of a different perspective.
Yep. And we've got to remember that it's also our job, we seek that out of people who are ahead of us, but it's also our job to look back and see where we can be maybe a mentor to somebody else. And sometimes I am within my first 5 years of practice, sometimes I'm like, am I really qualified to be somebody else's mentor? But I am. Somebody wants to hear what I've learned in my first 3 years of practice and where I'm at. So we've got to remember that it's also our responsibility to look and see where we can step in and play our part.
Yeah. So at my firm, I have 2 other associates, and one is a lot more experienced than me and my other associate who started about 6 months back. And we informally call ourselves the Dummies Club. And we just get together and we ask those questions that you would feel silly asking anyone else,
Yes.
And it's really great to kind of have that sort of safe space.
Yeah. That's why I like practicing with my dad, is because I can walk in and go, I can ask you any dumb question and you got to tell me you love me. So
I'm glad you brought that up, Monica.
Yes.
Give me a brief, just tell me a little bit about what each of you do to kind of give that perspective.
Yeah, so I work at a super small firm. It's my dad and I. We've got one other associate that just started this week, actually. And we do criminal defense and family and probate work. And so I am a young attorney that is trying cases and doing all that and very client facing. And that does bring a lot of high stress. And so something that I think we'll talk about here in a little bit is the work-life balance, and being able to step away from that is key. So because I have my own cases that I'm working from start to finish that no other attorneys are working on with me.
Right.
So,
yeah, and I work at a plaintiff side trial firm in St. Louis. We focus on employment law, so employment discrimination, and then a little bit of personal injury, and it's very client facing. It's we are trial attorneys, so it's preparing and a lot of negotiation, dealing with the other side. But yeah, I think Monica and I have been talking about this. It feels a little bit like, when you take on clients, you sort of have this sort of weighted backpack that's always with you. You feel the stress of your clients because they're coming to you on their worst day. And that's something that it's hard to separate yourself from.
Yeah.
And so, on the work-life balance piece, it's something that is definitely a struggle, which is why I know I was interested in working on Thursday being the social well-being day, because work-life balance, frankly, is something I've always struggled with.
Yeah, and it's something I'm pretty passionate about. It's something, anytime I meet a new attorney who has just started, the first question I ask them, hey, what's your work-life balance like? What are you doing outside of being a lawyer? I don't want to know about your practice right now. I want to know, what do you like to do outside of being an attorney? Because I do genuinely think that it makes us better attorneys to have something that we're doing away from being a lawyer. Having an identity outside of just being a lawyer makes me a better attorney, because I can step away from the law. And when I'm in the law, I'm fully present. And when I'm away from the law, I can be present in something else.
That's good. That kind of makes me think about the whole concept of work-life balance. And, we use that term a lot. And is it possible in the legal profession to have work-life balance specifically, or do you think it's more of a work-life integration, right? Like finding a better way to balance it all. We're integrating it all. We're doing it all, but we're still maintaining that side of us that is outside of work. So do you think that that's a concept that kind of goes with it, or is it no, it's strictly work-life balance? It has to be that.
I think it's a little bit of maybe a mix of both for me. I have to have that rigid boundary. I need a strict and clear boundary for myself. So something like, I have to pick up my kid by 5:30 from his daycare, or get charged $1 a minute after. It's something that's required, yes, that I have to give my kid by 5:30. So there are days where I am pushing it, but then I leave and I'm like, oh my goodness, I just left so much stuff at the office that I need to get done. But then I see my kid and I'm like, oh, it just shifts my focus, and it allows me to decompress and my priorities shift. And I think that having something out of, whether it's kids, family, a hobby, running, doing something different, getting your focus to shift away from work is key. And so having that integration, I also, I have had to set up practices for myself. In the beginning of my career, I found myself doomsday scrolling my work email on my phone at 3 a.m. because I had access to it. And I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and what do? Then check my work email. There's not a single client of mine that needs my 3 a.m. thoughts. They just don't. And so I had to take my work email off of my phone. I don't get email on my phone anymore. If I need it, I get it on my laptop. I always have access to it, but so I have to have strict, rigid boundaries set in place for for me to be successful at work life integration or balance, however you want to call it.
Yeah.
Not you, Jeremy.
Well, like I said, I mean, it's something that I quite honestly struggle with and I'm still sort of working on. And I think what sort of attracted me to what we'll be doing for Wellness Week in the Law and focusing on attorneys with hobbies is that we've now interviewed, several, and I'll just mention a few. So one is a pilot, one is a yoga instructor, a cooking enthusiast, a strongman competitor, and community theater. And,
Wow.
in speaking with them, a common sort of through line is how do you create that separation for yourself? And it seems to be that a lot of it is about putting everything in context. So you have, the stress, the seriousness with which we need to, serve our clients, whatever form that might take day in and day out. But then, having something that allows you to focus your mind on, the enjoyment of whatever that activity might be. And it really helps, at least what we've heard from them, is like put it into context.
Yep.
And, in doing research, for our day, the ABA put out an article talking about how hobbies significantly reduces stress. And that's something that we've really heard. It's so important. And these individuals being passionate about these things have really, they've made it a day-to-day practice for themselves.
Yeah, just shifting their perspective. I think that's been a super common theme for everything that we've seen, is that it just shifts your perspective as to your work and being able to take on the gravity of the situations that we are dealing with in our careers. And that, I think, is crucial to us as attorneys to be successful in whatever we're doing, in whatever area or facet that you practice the law in. Being able to get out of being in the trees and look at it from the bigger picture, I think is crucial to being successful.
Jeremy, I feel like you have to tell the story about the lawyer who is the pilot as a hobby and how he can go the extra mile, literally, for his clients.
I mean, it's fascinating because being a pilot for him, as he described it, it has its practical advantages, in terms of traveling to depositions, for example.
Amazing.
And what was so important that he talked about, I thought this was fascinating, just he wanted, he made it a priority in his life to be home for dinner with his family. And his hobby allowed him to do that because he could travel 45 minutes as compared to 4 hours, for example. And I think the one thing he told me was, he figures he's been home maybe 200 dinners with his family that he wouldn't have been otherwise able to be home for because of his hobby. And, some of these others might not lend themselves to that sort of practicality, but it's just such a fascinating, idea. And quite honestly, kind of makes me want to get my pilot's license.
No, seriously. And I feel like that kind of goes to the point of work-life integration. I think that's a great example. Like he's literally integrating his hobby into his work.
Right.
So he's able to do things he loves and still serve his clients in the same capacity. So I think that that's great. So kind of speaking to that social wellness and social identity, what's your identity outside of work? Like, what are the things that make you who you are?
Oh goodness, that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
That's a big one. For me personally, what do I like to do outside of work? I am a mom and I have a family and I love being with my family, but then also I host a life group and I am in a nonprofit and I'm on a board for a nonprofit. I go do trivia with my friends every Thursday. Well, most Thursdays. We don't always make it, but getting to go do like those social activities and step away from practicing law just allows me to then kind of refresh. And I live in a unique area. I live in Lake of the Ozarks. So I was talking with Jeremy about this earlier. What's unique about living at the lake is it might be a Tuesday and I might have had just a terrible, stressful day. But during the summertime, we can go on a boat and go boat to dinner and it feels like I am stepping away and on a little mini vacation. And that's what's nice. I think something that we've heard today that was super interesting and just such a perspective was vacationing alone though isn't enough because like if you're just wanting a vacation, if you're just living for a vacation and that's how you have a work-life balance, you're never going to have enough. And I'm misphrasing that. I'm not doing the best paraphrase of it, but if I think I've done that, and when it was spoken to us like that, I was like, I looked back at my life and I was like, wow, I do just look forward to that next vacation, and I need to be integrating something more than just a next trip.
Yeah. And maybe in that sense, integration is the better word.
Yeah,
right?
like,
Because if you're just living for your next vacation, you're going to still face all of the social well-being detrimental effects that we carry with us.
Right.
And when really it needs to be throughout the week. It needs to be day to day. It needs to be the Tuesday, life group, and Thursday trip.
mixing it all together. Yeah, being able to do that. Yeah, that's great. And I think it's important to set healthy boundaries, kind of like you said, like, this is my time, this is what I have to do, but also integrate that wellness into our day to day, so we are able to kind of serve in the capacity that we need to be able to serve. And I kind of want to bring up something that we want lawyers in the state of Missouri to know is the Missouri Bar has the Missouri Lawyer Assistance Program. And it is a professional confidential counseling program for members of the Missouri Bar and immediate family members who reside in the state. And through a variety of services, MOLAP helps individuals overcome personal concerns such as substance abuse, depression, and stress and burnout. And I wanted to bring up MOLAP because sometimes lawyers within the bar don't know about these resources that the bar has for wellness and things that we go through as lawyers. So MOLAP can be a great source for that. And I know you all have something special for the Social Wellbeing Thursday. So can you kind of give us a brief look into what that looks like a little bit?
Yeah, so on our Thursday, we're going to be featuring the peer mentorship program of MOLAP, and kind of showing that it's a program that allows confidential mentorship through MOLAP and substance abuse and other issues. But it's a program that I think is crucial and I don't think is widely used yet. So we will have a feature, an article about what that offers.
Awesome. Well, we want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Motion for Mindfulness podcast. And remember that Wellbeing in Law Week is May 5th through 9th. Thank you.